Good afternoon and welcome to the ATALAYA Mining PLC Q2 and H1 2023 financial results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand you over to Alberto Lavandiera, CEO. Good afternoon, sir.
Going to go through the present. You have seen the results in the press release, and at the end, to summarize, we had a good quarter. I would say a quarter with 14.2 thousand tons of copper. Basically, is setting us in the right target to get to our plans for around 53 to 55,000 tons of copper at the end of the year. All-in sustaining costs have been good, have been much lower than we have had in the first quarter, and much lower, of course, than the equivalent quarter last year. And so far, it looks like we are fully on track to get to this production of around 54,000 tons of copper, with all-in sustaining costs between 3 and 320, likely in the low end of this costs if things continue like they were. EBITDA this quarter has been around 60 million euros, with a little bit lower than the first quarter, with better cash costs, and there were some known cash adjustments due to the quotational periods of previous quarters that have impacted the EBITDA. Even so, the EBITDA, the half of the year, around 40 million euros, is quite a healthy one. One of the reasons of this is that the electricity prices are substantially lower than the previous year, around 60% lower, and they continue to trend lower. Right now in August, we're still slightly higher than the previous months due to the holiday season in Spain and the lack of wind, but still much lower, substantially lower than they were in the previous year. We continue to do some investments in the two main projects, which are the solar plant in our operation and the construction of the phase 1 of the E-LIX. And even so, after these investments, and paying back debt of around 30 million euros, we continue to have a strong net cash position of close to 70 million euros. And this was one of the reasons why after debating at the board decided to declare an interim dividend for the first part of 2023, consistent with our policy between 30 and 50% of the free cash flow. And we decided to give another 5 cents per share. And I will go with the details of payment a bit later. Another important thing of this quarter was we finally delisted from Toronto. It was a unnecessary expense cost that we decided to remove because really it was not giving us any liquidity. From the assets point of view, from the construction point of view, we continue to construct, as I said before, E-LIX and the solar plant. And we have been giving some announcements which were interesting. The first ones where we announced the results of the PEA of Rio Tinto, but we also got some authorizations of projects of Masa Valverde project, the environmental authorization, and also the environmental authorization to continue expansions of Rio Tinto, including tailings pond. The work in total is slow, but it's continuing in permitting wise. And related to Touro, we continue working with the water treatment at Touro, and the rivers are clean, and the news coming from that side, from that project, from the society and our stakeholders are always all very, very positive. So going a little bit into the details of this to the quarter, the plant behaved normally at a rate of close to 15.5 million tons per year. Good recoveries of 87, which were higher than previous quarters, and getting back to our levels of 87, 88%. And copper production, as I said before, with decent concentrate grades, were around 14,000 tons. Even if we had a slightly grade which was 0.4, which is probably slightly lower than we had expected, but this was compensated by the high recovery. As a result of that, the slightly lower sales, obviously due to the lower copper prices. EBITDA I mentioned before, slightly lower due to this non-cash adjustments, but with good operating cash flow of around 20 million euros, and left us with a net cash position which was better than the previous quarter. And of course, this results in a good cash position and good balance sheet, which you will see in the slide 9. We had a cash position of around 113 million euros and a net cash of around 70, with a nice working capital surplus of 81, even after these investments and that we have been doing in E-LIX, in solar, plus exploration and plus the permitting of Touro. So overall, I would say that we had a very good performance, and we continue to deliver in our plans. Part of this improvement came as a result of the decrease of the electricity prices. You will note in slide 10 the decrease of the equivalent quarter of around 300 euros per megawatt hour back in 2022 in the third quarter, and we are now a little bit less than 100 euros per megawatt hour. So it's a huge decrease, and this is one of the reasons why the results are better, the operating results are better, the financial results are better. Of course, the gas prices also have a reflection in other things like lime production and even explosives prices, where explosive prices have been decreasing from around 150 to around €1 per kilo. This is reflected in the detailed breakdown of cash costs that we see in slide 11. We have been starting to give the breakdown of these costs during the last few quarters, and you can see, comparing with previous quarter and comparing with the full year, how the mining has been reduced significantly, almost 10 cents per pound from equivalent quarter of last year, and that was due to the high diesel price, high explosives price, and in the processing, that's plant treatment, is really where you can see the big difference. The cost of 0.82, it's significantly lower than what we had at 131 in last year, and even lower than what we had in the first quarter. This is mainly due to the reduction in prices, slight reduction in prices in lime, but mainly the reduction in electricity price. The rest have been in other side, which is health and safety, administration, purchases, all these things, laboratory, the auxiliary services, water, are more or less constant, same, slightly lower than they used to be in the last year. But other than that, we can see that overall we have a reduction in site operating costs of almost 50 cents per pound compared to previous year. Just to give you an idea, if we are producing more or less 120 million pounds per year, this is equivalent to around $60 million, just this reduction in operating costs. Freight has also reduced a little bit due to the reduction in freight charges, 5 cents. So overall, all cash costs are 260, which are in the low end of our guidance. And I would remind those listening that these cash costs, specifically in mining, include the capital cost of replacement of the mining fleet, which is taken care by the mining contractor. So this is something not very often, and that mining companies have their own. Normally, mining companies have their own mining fleet, and they have to replace the fleet once in a while. We don't have that case. And that's included in all-in sustaining costs, which also were substantially lower, again around 50 cents per pound than previous year. again, how this compare with others? Well, normally we have this slide in the back end of the presentation. In this slide, we put all-in sustaining costs of peers, companies, based on public information, all of it. And in the left side of each of the columns is the quarter by quarter. So basically, is more recent quarters are the left side of each of the piles. One of the things you will notice is in the last 6 quarters, our all-in costs have been going down constantly. Unlike lots of other peers, where you can see that the costs have been continuing to go higher for whatever it is, for whatever reasons. But this is something that we like to make some emphasis, because often Atalaya is considered a high-cost producer, and we don't think we think we are not a low-cost producer, obviously, but we do wonderful things with what we have. So this is a good comparison to see what you have in the market. So how does it look this year? Well, it looks normal, I would say. I won't say boring normal, but I would say normal. The copper grade, we are right now in the low end of our guidance, but anyway, we are in the higher end of the copper recovery, so at the end, these things are compensating one each other. We believe we are in the low end of cash costs, so cash cost will be closer to 260, and all-in cost $3 or under per pound. So in theory, consistently under our guidance, and the guidance of production will be around 54,000 tons of copper. Obviously, this is assuming that the electricity prices continue as they are. It looks like the tendency is going down once the summer is out, and except the recent days where the gas prices in Europe have jumped a little bit due to some uncertainty of supplies. The reality is that it looks like Europe, and specifically Spain, is already not reliant at all in the gas prices coming from Russia, and the stores are over 80%, well before they were supposed to be before the winter. So it looks like we're in a good position. We will continue to invest in E-LIX and in exploration and in solar, and it looks like the capital costs of E-LIX is going higher due to several reasons, but mainly being a new technology and being done in a very, I would say, in a way that's not fast-tracked, due to being the technology being applied for the first time. So we have a slight delay, which obviously means that we have a slightly higher capital costs. Besides all this, as I said, the behavior of the company has been going quite well. So the board decided to give a dividend of 5 cents per share, around 4 pennies per share. The record date will be 25th of August, so a couple of weeks, and the payment will be more or less at the end of September. We realize that we have just paid the first part of the last part of the dividend of last year, just days ago, weeks ago, but we wanted to be consistent with what we did last year. So the reason of this is that by Cyprus law, the final dividend has to be approved by the AGM, which sets the date of this final payment at the June approval. So by the time you pay, you end up paying in August. And we decided to declare interim dividend each 6 months, and then have the final dividend once we know the final results of 23. So we continue with our policy, as we stated, of paying 30 to 50% of the cash flow generated during the year, and unless there's investment needed at certain time and short notice, we will continue with this policy, of course. For 23, I think for 23 we have two things that we have to finish. First, finish with E-LIX. It's advancing. All the equipment's on site. They are assembling pipes, cables, lots of activity in the ground. And our target is to have some feed of concentrate before the end of the year. So likely to be in the fourth quarter, and we are pushing and trying to help Lain Technologies as much as we can. In the case of the solar plant, we also had some delays with the final license and of Rio Tinto Village. Right now, there's lots of work going on the ground by installing the supports, and cables. We have all the equipment, all the transformer on site. So again, this solar plant is divided in two areas, the one in the north and one in the south. The one in the north is smaller, close to the plant, and we are targeting to start the connection of that at the end of the year, maybe worse, the first month of 24. So a small delay, but still advancing very well. Besides that, we continue to do all the studies and all the work, detailed permitting to get San Dionisio into production as soon as possible. San Dionisio, as you may recall, is basically the pushback of this pit that's seen in picture 17 in the left corner. In the bottom corner is just one drill rig, which we continue with drilling with 3 rigs in Ossa Morena, in Bassa Valverde, 2 rigs in Ossa Morena, and 1 rig in Rio Tinto East. And we will continue with this small slowdown in summer, but we will continue doing this due to the effect, the restrictions of forest fires. You cannot do lots of things during this extreme heat wave that we have right now in Spain. But besides that, we will continue drilling normally in these exploration sites. The right side is some expressions of Touro. In Touro, the activities there are all related to engaging with the authorities. They're helping them looking through the papers. All the papers have been presented, and we are waiting to see some decision after the summer period. In summer, everything goes to sleep, at least in the administration. And but so far, the reception of the project and the local support has been excellent, including some public support by authorities and by associations recently in the newspapers. In summary, I've just gone through all these things. In summary, we still have a very busy year, and our goal is to get our company on track to get to over 100,000 tons of copper produced, first with the addition of production from San Dionisio area, from Rio Tinto, and second with the addition of Touro that can get us over 120,000 tons. We believe in the copper market. We believe that that the market will change. We know there's a slowdown in the consumption in China from internal consumption, although the energy transition is requiring more and more copper. The stocks are low. We see what's happening with big companies like Codelco going down. So we don't know when, but it's for sure it will happen, that there is a certain time where copper will have to go up, and significant copper prices have to go up significantly to incentivize new projects, either brownfield or greenfield. We are as part of that. We are one of the few copper producers in London, and we continue with our goal to be listed in the main market as soon as possible. We are doing all the work, and I believe there is a question about that during the question and answer, and we will give you how that is progressing. So For those of you that do not know much about us, we are in Europe, stable, consistent, best practices. We have a growth pipeline, very clear. We have demonstrated that in the past years. We never stop. We have an excellent team that continue to deliver, continue to do always improvements in operation, in new installations, reduction of costs, exploring. And really it is a low cost proposition and a low risk proposition on copper. And with that, I would say that the best thing is to go to the question and answer.
Perfect. Alberto, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we've received questions throughout today's presentation, and if I could just ask you to read out those questions and give responses where it is appropriate to do so, I'll pick up from you at the end.
So if I may start reading some of the presentation we have received. What is delaying the transfer to the main FTSE exchange? I think I will pass this to Cesar, which is handling the contacts with lawyers and the sponsor bank, etc., and he can give you all the details.
Thank you, Alberto, and hello, everyone. So we have no delays on the process. I think it's been very clear from the company to say that being listed in the main market, it's been a strategic objective for the company, a good goal to achieve. And we had, over the last year, we had some issues by migrating the company to the UK, and that's for some tax reason, and that's why we call off that process. But we continue with the process and to be listed in the main market. And the people need to understand that there are some complexities on the different work streams that we need to work on. But as Alberto mentioned, we are working on it. We continue working very hard to get it done as soon as possible, and there is some complexity that we need to overcome. But I wouldn't expect any delay. Things are progressing quite well, and hopefully we can give you a little bit more information, detailed information, once we continue our discussion with the regulator and with the different work streams that we have.
Thank you, Cesar. There's another question saying, how much production should we expect from E-LIX in 23, minimal, and 24? Will it be mostly zinc or some copper too? I think, to be fair, in 23, I will be very happy if we simply start treating concentrates and get on top of my table some ingots of zinc or cathodes of copper. Initially, we will start with zinc. We'll start treating, we have already identified some areas with zinc and copper, where we will be floating and producing a global concentrate. And from this global concentrate, copper zinc, we will leach out the zinc without touching the copper, or minimal touching the copper, and that copper will be sold and the zinc will be sold as a byproduct. So in 23, due to the delays that they have, I think minimal. In 24, I would say that depends on when they start full steam. I would say that mostly will be zinc, maybe some copper, but mostly will be zinc because that's where we will concentrate. And I would be happy if we get to the range of 70% of the, I would say 7,000 tons, 8,000 tons of zinc. I would be very happy with that. At the end, where the value of this plant comes from is to be able to recover zinc that otherwise is not recoverable. And when we have zinc copper, to be able to have much higher recoveries of both in places where we have very complex metallurgy. Specifically, there are some deposits in the Parrot Belt, some of them owned by us, where the grain is very fine, and when you have to grind down to 20 microns or less in order to recover copper, and sometimes even the copper, you can only get 70% or 60% of copper. Using E-LIX, we have demonstrated it can be done. So this is the main goal of it. By the way, this plant that we are building, it has the capacity to treat 3,000 tons of copper and 10,000 tons of zinc. But the reality is, with minimum additions, we'll be able to treat double than that. So the space, the building, the CCMs, the transformers, the electrolysis, everything except the tanks and filters, the plantation tanks, are all overdesigned to almost double. So with a minimal investment, we will be able to produce more, to treat more. But initially, answering the question will be mostly zinc. Copper, if we do copper, it will be only to test it and demonstrate it. Another thing is, what are your latest thoughts on potential for regional consolidation in the Iberian Pyrite Belt? Well, my latest thoughts have always been the same. It's not latest, it's really what I believe it should happen in some way. There are several projects going on and several companies going on, and I think eventually we will have to see what are the synergies of each part. We have a couple of companies in Portugal. We have 2-3 producing projects in Huelva, in Spain, and in Sevilla, and another 2 that can come. So eventually, I think we'll probably be doing something together. I think 24 will be an interesting year, especially if we get the technology of E-LIX working as we expect, because certainly that will open, let's say, that will open the doors of doing something together with neighbors. There's one question here that there has been some press that there can be a situation where too hot can be bad for solar. Any risk here for us? It is true. It is true that when it's too hot, the performance of the solar panels are slower than in clear spring days but simply a smaller performance. For example, in Spain right now, if you look at anyone looks at the charts, Spain will probably be producing during sunny days around 70% from solar. So there's no risk, simply the performance is lower when it's very hot. But that depends a lot on the wind and depends on the situation. But so far, Spain is producing normally and quite well. What impact will weak US dollar have on the company in the future? Well, our operating costs are around 70% denominated in euros. So the exchange rate of dollar in euros has a direct influence with us. So depending how is the exchange rate euro to dollar, a weak euro is better for us in 70% of the cases. So that will, whatever deterioration of the US dollar will probably mean higher operating costs for us. But having said that, we also have to look at what would happen with the metal prices, because normally there is a correlation with that, with the metal prices. So normally metal prices go up when those things happen. Another question is, our debt situation is very strong. There is a chance that some of our competitors may struggle. Any talks advancing with possible targets who may not have as a strong balance sheet? Well, we continue to look at targets in Spain, in Europe, and in other places of the world, provided it makes sense. We have not only a balance a strong balance sheet, but we have a healthy position from a debt point of view, because we don't have a project debt and we don't have royalties or streams. So this, yes, it's an advantage. And when discussing with potential acquisition targets, this together with our demonstrated capability to get things done with minimum capital cost has been a plus. And we will try to continue using that for to our advantage. But so far we have not closed anything. But we continue having talks always with targets, provided the right price. We don't like to overpay. Another question is, can you give us a split of capex spending during the quarter on the E-LIX and solar projects? Cesar, do you have the details there in front of you? I have it also, but I have to open them.
Yes, I do. So for the solar plant, we spent around 2.8 million during the quarter, and for E-LIX, 2.1 million. So these are the amount that we spent during the quarter on solar and E-LIX.
There's another question, interesting question. We appreciate the dividend, but with the share price so low, what do you think about to what you think the company is worth? Do you switch to share buybacks? This is something that we have discussed at the board, and it's a good point because we could buy our shares back because there is a good investment. But there was lots of discussion, and we thought that one of the problems could be that we will dry the limited liquidity. There is one of the reasons why our share doesn't move is that people that hold it, they don't want to sell at these prices. So we have thought on that, but so far we decided not to do it for the moment. Another question saying, listed in other markets, where is the thinking now? UK, Spain? Are you aware that dual listed can cause a negative effect on share price through arbitration of dual listed shares? For example, of dual listed share class, BHP had this on a grand scale for years. Cesar, you want to get to, thinking of UK and Spain, the advantage and disadvantage of each?
Yes, we're looking at all the options. So as you might be aware of, we are currently a Cypriot entity. Now, being listed in the main market as we are trying to pursue, and being incorporated in Cyprus might have some issues to be included in the FTSE Russell's index. And this is why we're looking to move the company to other location, or at least we're trying to understand what the options are. If we migrate the company to Spain, as an example, we will be able to be listed in the main market and be included in the FTSE Russell index. But this is only if you're not listed in Spain. So if you're dual listed in Spain and in the UK, and you are a Spanish incorporated entity, you might have some limitation to be included in the FTSE. At the end of the day, the main goal is to be listed in the main market, to be included in the FTSE index, to provide more liquidity to the shares and hopefully help the share price to go up. And this is what we, looking at all these options. But for the time being, the project as is currently being progressing on is continually be listed in the main market and looking the possibility of migrate the company to another Europe country. But that's the thinking about the dual listed. So we need to be very cautious in terms about being listed in another country if you want to be included in the FTSE, which I think it will be good for the company.
Thank you. There's another question here. Can you provide some more detail on permitting status to begin mining at San Dionisio? How is the project expected to impact copper production next year? Well, the time with permits, you never know. We have submitted the small modifications of the mining of the pit, the moving of the road, which has gone through public consultation. We believe, what are the things needed there? We need to move an electric line, we need to move the road, we need to get a permit to mine specifically there. We believe we could get into some mining per stripping even this year and or early part of next year. How much is that going to impact the copper production of next year? I really don't know. Not much being the first year. I would say not much. How do you think about the timeline for total approval? Is it the next 12 months or 5 years? More like 5 years. No, certainly will be less than 12 months, without any question. Right now, in fact, due to some changes in the laws that have happened, in theory, the mining authorities should provide an environmental impact statement within the next 6 months of receiving the papers. So even with delays that are created by the lots of questions by the anti-mining groups that try to slow down the process always. For example, last time we were almost 1 year in public information when it should have been only 1 month. But the way things are going, I think will be certainly in the next 12 months. What will you expect the impact of San Luis ore in 23 and 24? I think, as I said before, in 23 only moving some waste, in 24 probably something, but I cannot tell you how much in production. I would guess a little bit. Our target will be to try to get some ore high grade sooner rather than later in 24, but I cannot give you the numbers right now. On exploration activities, can you please give me the detail of the work you have been doing in H1 and what the exploration programs are going forward? Where are you seeing the most potential to add value in the business to exploration? This is an interesting question because we are not doing infill drilling at any site. So we know that we have some good grades in Masa Valverde, copper and zinc. What we are doing is checking. This will not change the needle. What we are doing is risky exploration at Masa Valverde, checking two lateral zones, two parallel zones to Masa Valverde, which are called Campanario, and another one is called Mojarra. In all of them, we have cut sulfides. Some are better grades than others, and it's a matter of following this kind of mineralized levels. The good thing here is that we have proven that the geophysics system, especially fixed loop EM ground level, works well combined with gravity, and we are systematically testing. Sometimes we only intersect pyrite, sometimes it's two spots, sometimes it's just pyrite in the shales, but this is the way. Potential. I think the best potential is to find another deposit like has been done in the parallel belts. I mean, there have been new discoveries. One place called Elvira, another one called Magdalena, which is a major world-class deposit, which was only a few kilometers away from existing known deposits. So it's a matter of, I would say, a little bit persistence and luck. We have 10 million euros in exploration budget. We recently hired the former exploration manager that was responsible of several discoveries in the Parrot Belt, and we will continue that way. Once we get the permits of Touro, we also intend to start a big exploration program there because mineralization remains open in basically all the directions. Does Atalaya have any assets outside of Spain left over the IMID days? Nothing left. We still have some shares of Kefi Mining that the previous management of IMED decided to self-invest, and basically the value is asymptotic towards zero, so it's going bad. But besides that, we don't have anything. Could Cesar give some little more color on the tax issues with moving to the main market and a firmer timeline? Cesar, you can. I think you have responded to it, but this you can.
Yeah. Just to be clear, there are no tax issues to move to the main market. So the tax issues arrived when we tried to migrate the company from Cyprus to the UK. And that was basically as a result that the UK law doesn't admit to a redomiciliation process, and therefore we need to incorporate a UK entity, and that UK entity will make an offer to buy all the shares of the Cypriot entity. And that offer will trigger some taxes in Spain to all the shareholders of ATALAYA Mining PLC. But again, this is why the reason why we call off the process of migrating the company from Cyprus to the UK. And there is no question on that. So, but migrating the company from Cyprus to Spain has no tax issues, and listing the move up from AIM to the main market has no tax issue. It's neutral for the company. So we don't have any tax issue for the current project, and all the taxes were related to the UK migration, which is now abandoned.
Okay. What's the relation with a lawyer, eco-lawyer that came to AGM once in London? We invited her to see the dams, and is she now a partner rather than a foe? Well, I think they have kind of forgotten us. They have given up. So far, we have been. They always complain. Even they complained when we were looking for the permits of E-LIX, but they always trying to complain through the administrative process, not anymore through any environmental reason, because really there is no reasons. So I think they kind of. We are not the target anymore. What is the current status regarding Touro project? What are the upcoming milestones and any change in view on the probability of receiving the permits in the project? Look, I've been told personally that we will get the permits. So for me, it's a matter of when, not when. Unfortunately, the timing with politicians and civil servants is very slow. We have had elections in Spain twice, municipal and national, which created kind of uncertainty. The municipal elections made some changes in the high level at the Junta de Galicia, the regional government, because the former president, the former minister, equivalent to the Minister of Industry, was a candidate for one province and had to leave, and he was substituted by a young lady. This lady, we have had contact with her, and it seems to be quite supportive. Simply asked us a little bit of time to get through the file, but told us that everything had heard was very positive. Milestones. We will expect to receive some news in September to see if our project is accepted as a project of strategic interest. If this is the case, the timelines for permitting and lots of other things are reduced. If that's not accepted, it doesn't mean anything. It simply means that it goes through the normal route. And what's the next milestone is starting the public information of the project. In theory, it should be quite straightforward, because in the last time we presented the papers, we had 15 reports received from the administration, 13 were positive, and 2 were questionable. And based on these 2, we receive a negative environment and impact declaration. These 2 departments now are totally positive, and they have been explained the changes, and they are keen to give a positive report. So I don't see any reason why it would be a no at all. And so I think the probabilities are extremely high. The timing is the difficult part, because the anti-mining groups, anti-mining or anti-development or anti-everything, they're also opposing, for example, windmills, even although wind is considered a very environmental friendly generation, they're opposing using the small corners of the law, trying to delay the installation of parks. They are simply people that are trying to slow things, and this is something that's worrying the local administration, because it's just collapsing the administration, the civil servants. So it's something we have to live with, and they're in the administration, they are putting in place new laws to streamline permitting and hope that they give some push to all this permitting, not only to us, to all the rest of activities. I like this one. Your current target to be 1 billion pounds market cap. Of course, I maintain it. That's the minimum. I don't know why we're not much more. There's another question saying anything management can do to increase liquidity. Traffic in the Chinese are supportive shareholders, but lack of liquidity keeps shares undervalued. Well, as you know, the Chinese shareholder has disappeared now, and that has been placed into institutions. So now we only have Trafigura, which is 22%, and it's very passive. And the rest are institutions, but nobody wants to sell. I think the liquidity is all coming from private hands, and once in a while, some higher volumes when some institution wants to buy. Well, we are doing things. We are starting to see investors, family offices in the UK, in Europe, in Switzerland, starting in September, because I think the moment we create more buyers that are able to see the value, the shares will move. E-LIX, obviously, we are very excited with this. Are there any other process that we can consider investing in? Well, not that I am aware. I mean, this thing of E-LIX is kind of unique, and especially unique for our purposes and for our deposit. Is the tailings facility expansion at Rio Tinto progressing as expected and on budget? And for how long will the TSF have capacity? Yes, this is progressing normally. It's totally on budget. We have, with the current permits, around 10 years of space. And having said that, we will soon start the permitting of a new tailings facility downstream of the existing one, to be able to hold more capacity, and it will be installed in a valley, narrow valley, which will reduce the capex for the future. That one will not have a rush to get permitted, but certainly will mean a higher capacity for over 150 million tons, and especially at lower capital and operating costs. I have two other questions that came through mail, which normally we don't answer, but I will answer them. Total, the commentary is the same. Just wondering what has changed in the ground in the last 6 months. Are we any closer to resolution? What are indicators? And well, yes, I mentioned that the main change here is the attitude of the local population. For example, just to give you an idea, the last month we have been given a kind of symbolic prize, trophy of the gold clam by the Fishermen Association of the river mouth of the river Ulla, which is a river that goes under Touro, receives the water of Touro, due to the efforts of cleaning the water and transparency and so on. Well, these same people were some of the people opposing in the past. So right now we are considered friends, and we are doing a fantastic job of cleaning the waters of the past, and they don't see us as an enemy at all. This thing is transpiring to the local authorities. So we are sponsoring the the football team of Santiago, and they have nice words to us, and we are asked to be in this forums of green economy and copper economy, with along with people with car factories, which are happen to be Stellantis has a big car factory in Galicia. So the fact that we are seen as a company for the future, including presentations with the president of the junta and the consejera, the minister, I think is good. I mean, the relation is fantastic, and simply they tell us that simply they are overloaded with papers. That's the only reason of the delays, but nothing major. And the last one is E-LIX looks like it's taking longer and costing more. What does it maybe approaching 30 million? What will be a good result for second part of the year? Well, for me, a good result would be to, as I say, to have some concentrate going through and demonstrating that the leaches well, as we have seen in the lab and in the pilot plant, having some ingots produced of high purity metals of zinc and cathodes of copper produced in my office, show them, tell it, and yes, it's going to cost more, as I said. Between our involvement and things that we have done and support and loans and accounting for everything, probably yes, approaching the 30 million. And the last question I have here: what is Atalaya ranking as a copper producer in Spain? Obviously, many are not listed, so I think, well, there are not many producing companies now, because there used to be one, which was Las Cruces, which is First Quantum, but they stopped the production this year. In June, I think they stopped total production, and the next phase requires a big investment, producing around 40,000 tons of copper. The biggest producer is Sunfire with Matza complex, which produces around 80,000 tons of copper. And then there's a small producer in the north part of Spain with around 10,000 tons of copper. And lots of other projects, but not big producers anyway. So in Spain, yes, we are the second. Well, I think I don't see any more questions, so I will pass it back to you.
Alberto, Cesar, thank you very much for that. I think you've addressed all those questions from investors, and of course the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors, provide you their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company. Alberto, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Well, yes, thank you. As usual, thank you for your continued support. I like to see some names in the questions. We continue to deliver. It's hard because it's a little bit frustrating to see that the share price does not respond, and there's lack of liquidity. Maybe it's our fault, but I think it's eventually it will come. I think people still are thinking that the electricity prices are still high, and we will continue to having high costs, and we just demonstrate the opposite. We will continue to perform. We will deliver what we are doing. This year we'll end up having this thing of E-LIX, which is going to be transformational for the company, and hopefully we can also advance Toro very close to production. So we're in a good path, and thank you very much for your support and being there. I mean, in one side I hate not having liquidity, but in the other side I see, well, nobody wants to sell at these prices, so everybody must be happy. So thanks a lot to all of you.
Alberto, Cesar, thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ATALAYA Mining PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.